Why is Christian community important? That's what we're talking about today on the To Be the Church podcast. Welcome to the To Be the Church podcast, where we explore what it looks like to truly be the church in today's culture. I'm Tyler.
Tyler's back.
Yes. Ben's here too. Andrew, you've I guess you were gone a few weeks, but
I was. Yeah, I turned it over to Ben
Like 4.
late August, like 3.
how was it holding how was it holding the fort down while?
Yeah,
while
it was
we
the
were gone?
worst experience of my life. Yep. Thank you.
You're saying that podcasting with your daughter in the cutest way possible was the worst experience of your life?
No, that was my favorite thing.
Okay, that's pretty awesome.
But no, just having to schedule things and having to think things through.
If I could go,
fun.
Having to work past 2 p.m.,
Dude, I'm gonna murder you.
if I could go back, I would like call you and be like, please don't invite Todd freaking Miles onto the podcast for 2 weeks before we come back, because people are going to be expecting good stuff. Like, I mean, he's brilliant. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, it was great.
No,
Yeah.
it was several questions we've been ducking for like a year or two that he just handled in that last episode.
Well, I had the thought. It's like somebody thinks they're going to go watch a minor league baseball game, but then there's like this major league all-star who's maybe on rehab or something like that. And it's like, oh, I think I'm going to go watch the Savannah Bananas play. But then, Bryce Harper shows up and hits 2 home runs. It's like, that's what the last 2 weeks of the podcast were. These people sending these questions thinking that we were going to talk about them.
The breaking news is that Miles is on rehab or in rehab. Like, what's happening there?
No.
So, did you see Burger Eam closed?
Yes.
I thought it was Burger I Am.
It's Eam, like the Hebrew thing, right?
Well, because me and Todd were going to meet there for lunch, and I had just eaten there the week before with you, and
We
then
closed it down, you and me.
I go in there like it's the same owners. They're changing it to ramen, but
Should have ordered a drink, man.
yeah.
When we ordered drinks and they were like, no soda machine, I should have known, man. These guys don't have long. I didn't realize that. I've always called it Burger I Am, like instant messenger. Burger Eam, I should have known. I've
called
taken
it Burger
years of
I Am
Hebrew.
many times, but
Yeah.
it's Burger Eam.
Burger Eam
Now
or
it doesn't
the
even
female
exist.
is Burger Oat.
Yeah.
In Hebrew, that's a Hebrew joke.
What do you mean that this is minor league without Todd around? What do you mean? This is high quality content.
I'm just so happy that we're back together. Tyler's back. My life is complete. Yeah, it's good. Ready to roll.
Yeah, what do you want to talk about, Ben?
You had a subject, Ben.
Yes.
What do you got?
So, just based on conversations I've had recently with some folks, and also as we're jumping into Philippians at both NGC locations this Sunday, I've been thinking about this idea of just the importance of community in the Christian life. I was specifically thinking about, you and I were talking yesterday about the passage and the you there being in the plural form.
Philippians 1, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that's really common throughout the New Testament that kind of gets lost in English, right? Not only because it just says you in English, but then we live in a really individualistic culture. Definitely different than first century, time over in Israel and the different places around it. But even compared to other parts of the world, we're extremely individualistic and more than collectivistic. And I've been talking to people that as I'm kind of counseling them, they're just longing for community. And so I thought with community groups kicking off at NGC at both campuses coming up, what would you guys say just about the importance of why a Christian needs to be in community with other Christians, like in their discipleship, in their growth? Because what I'm seeing more and more, and I get it because I feel it too, people are so busy. There's no margin, yet they're struggling in their faith and they need community. So I don't know. There's a lot there, but what would you guys say just about the importance of community, why people need it, why Christians need it specifically as disciples?
Tyler, you're fresh off sabbatical. And
You were kind of away from your community, right?
Yeah.
For 3 months.
ish. Didn't you take a vacay with your community on your sabbatical?
Our community group did a vacation together.
That's how embedded in Christian community Tyler is, where he goes on sabbatical, he still hangs out with his community group. I mean, how many among us can say that? Literally one.
Dude.
You, because me and Ben didn't do that. Yeah. Teach us, Tyler. Teach us.
I just think this is anecdotal, but I think it rings true. And that's that most of the growth and maturity that you see in Christians happens because of, and in the presence of other people, and God uses those other people to help do that. Sure, we all have moments where it's like, I listened to this podcast, I gained this new knowledge, and that led me to a deeper love for the Lord. But more often than not, the growth happens like through the wrestling through life and frustrations and things that are going well, things that aren't going well, with the people that you're close to and people that share that same desire to grow. And so again, anecdotal, but like I have some friends who have decided like, hey, I'm a Christian, I just don't need any of the other people. And I look at that and just think like, man, first off, I think they're just wrong theologically, but also just how much are they just missing out on in the ability to grow together. That's a big one. And then I also see Christian community, and Nathan even talked about this a little bit in our staff meeting today. The Christian community is almost a set of guardrails for you to help you realize when you're veering off track a little bit.
Yep.
And the call was at Hebrews 3, I think, to exhort one another to not let each other fall away. And so
not be deceived by the deceitfulness of sin.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so those guardrails that are there, I mean, it's happened multiple times where had somebody close to me be like, hey, like I keep hearing this in your attitude. And I think that like you're in danger of this. And when I examine myself, I'm like, oh, you were right. And I had no idea, or I saw it, but didn't want to admit it, or whatever. So,
we don't always see ourselves clearly or accurately. And so we need other eyes on our lives, on our marriages, on our walk with the Lord. It makes me think of like when American Idol was super popular and you'd have those people come and audition who were just terrible, but then they had the parent who was like next to them, like, yeah, she's the total package, and like, it was like them just allowing them to think that they're good and that everything's fine is actually not loving. They're like helping them in being deceived. And so as Christians, like we shouldn't just sit back and not hold each other accountable. We should, in love, that's what church discipline is, like 99% of the time, is holding each other accountable to God's word. And we do that in love, but that can only be done if we're in community. We can see each other's lives. We know what's going on. And so, yeah, I totally agree with that.
What triggered that in my study of Philippians 1 this week, as you and I were talking about it, Ben, verse 6, which Philippians is one of these books that has so many of these very popular verses that can be easily taken out of context. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, 4:13, that we bring up a lot. But I think 1:6 is one that, as I was studying the context of it this week, and I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. And you hear that all the time utilized to encourage individual believers about something they're going through, right? I mean, and I think we've probably all utilized that text in that way. And I'm not saying you can't encourage a believer with that text. You certainly can. But as you look at it in its context, I'm sure of this, that he who began a good work in you, that you is plural, will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. And in the wider context here, verse 5, he's talking about their partnership in the gospel with him, their koinonia in the gospel with him. And in verse 7, he says that they are partakers with him of grace. They, the Corinthian Christians, all of those are plural pronouns in there. And so I just feel like with verses 5 and 7 being like the bookends of verse 6, it really brought out that reality that this is Christian community. The work that God is doing in, like you said, Tyler, in individual Christians happens in Christian community. And we're so individualistic in our culture that we so often take a verse like verse 6 and go, okay, God began this work in me and he's going to bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. Well, really, he began the work in us. And the necessity there in application of that verse to be, I don't even know how I'm going to say this on Sunday, but to be on the job site that God's working on. Like he's working on and in and through his people. And to think that that the good work that God is doing in you is going to be brought to completion if you are disconnected, unaffiliated, unassociated, isolated from God's people, it's just biblically inaccurate, you know? So,
Yeah. And, you know, as I meet with people just for like pastoral counseling, for shepherding, I feel like, you know, people are coming to me as a pastor and they want encouragement, they want guidance, they want wisdom, counsel, whatever. And I want to give that as much as I can to our people as a pastor. But obviously, and this is much more the case at East Vancouver, there's limits to that, right? How many people the pastor can actually shepherd and care for. And so people, if they want to be cared for and known and shepherded, yes, they should expect that from their pastor, elder, overseers, but they should, you know, you're not going to probably get to have coffee with the pastor every single week for discipleship, but you can meet with a group of other saints in that same local body every week for encouragement and discipleship and learning. And so, yeah, I think that's the primary way that Christians are going to grow in the local church, is in community with other members of that church. Yeah, I think the people I see often when they're struggling and feel disconnected, usually it's because they're not prioritizing community in the local church. They got so much going on. And again, like I said, I get that, but I just want to encourage people, you need community. That's how we grow.
Yeah, it really is countercultural though. So while I was out, Katie and I both read a handful of books on resting and on Sabbath and stuff like that, and it, trying to implement some weekly resting practices within our family, and just how countercultural that is. She actually made the statement at one point. We listened to a podcast with somebody who'd lived in Israel and like lived with the literal like Friday night to Saturday night Sabbath, and how the whole city just shuts down, and the market is buzzing on Friday afternoon with people getting ready for it. And she made the statement, she's like, I'd love to just like live for a year in a society where that's normal, because I think it would help me live in this society where it's not. And I think that that same principle can apply to the idea of community. Like, I think once you see it lived out in a true way and like you experience it, it becomes much, you start seeing the fruit and the importance of reordering your life to make it work, you know? And I think for a lot of people, and this has been the case for us, that needs to be really structured until it doesn't. And because it doesn't happen naturally, because again, our culture is pulling you away. There's pulling you to, you know, every night of the week there's activities and stuff going on. And so that like needs a ton of structure again, until it doesn't. And that's what we found with the people that we're close to, where it was a time where it's like, we meet every Tuesday at 6 p.m. and then boom, 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 you know, until we hit a point where it's like, hey, we're just a part of each other's lives in a way now where we don't have to have this rigidity in the schedule, because we've to be a rebel, we've bucked against the culture, you know, like enough that it's that's what's natural to us.
Yeah, and dude, I think that's a good word for like those people starting into community group. I think we've probably all been in Christian community long enough, the three of us, to have both sides of those experiences, right? You have those types of groups, those types of community groups, or those types of, you know, whatever, that when you meet, it's more geared around the initiative, like Tyler, like you said, like the schedule, like, okay, it's going to be 6 p.m. on Tuesday nights, or the activity you're doing there. Okay, we're going to do this specific Bible study, or we're going to do this meal and then this, and it's sort of geared around tasks, or geared around schedule, and not necessarily super organic, right? And I think if you're stepping into new community, it automatically has to be in some way structured at first until those relationships develop. But I think at times the structure can stay in place too long, or become the quote unquote community. Like the community is around the structure versus the structure serving. It's almost like man exists for like the Tuesday night Bible study, not the Tuesday night Bible study for man, you know? And I think I've had both of those experiences, and I've generally, frankly, had more of the experience where like the event is what, you know, it's geared around, or the teaching and discussion time, or this. And those should be the means to an end to grow into the organic disciples making disciple type of community that is that true community, you know. And I mean, at NGC we call that like table-like community, where you're at the table with those people in their lives, metaphorically speaking, like you're at the kitchen table, and those are those kitchen table type relationships that are intimate, that are connected, that are natural, that are, you know, spirit-led. They're not perfect. I mean, in fact, they're very imperfect. It's really those type of relationships where you can start to have healthy conflict, and which is where you truly start to grow. And that's what I thought, Tyler, when you were mentioning growing in community together. What is it? What are like some of the major means to the growth that we have when we're in real deep level community with other people? It's the suffering we go through, and it's the conflict that we have, and it's the working through of that stuff that truly forms us, right?
Yeah, I think too, on the receiving end of it, it's realizing that people truly care for you. It's during that structured Tuesday night Bible study, pouring your heart out and saying that you're heartbroken about your sister-in-law who doesn't know the Lord or whatever, and then the person texting you 3 days later, like saying they're praying for that, you know, and that happening over and over. It's like, oh, like you start to see, and that gets reciprocated, and like you, some of the verses about loving one another become a lot more real whenever you feel that from a fellow Christian.
And I think you see that when the leader or the group as a whole has the awareness of like, someone in our group is suffering right now, we're not just going to get through the questions, right? It's like we're going to minister to each other with the truth of God's word. We're going to do that vine work of taking God's word and giving it to people, ministering to them with it. Because kind of the flip side, like you said, if it was going on too long, we'd be like the leader, like not being aware of what someone's going through and just kind of like going through the questions.
Yeah,
and
well, we
like,
got to get through this.
And it's like, no, let's have that organic community. And I think, man, people, because we're creating God's image and he is triune in his three persons in one God, we're created for community. So everyone gets this as human beings. We long for it. And I think, like you said, so many Christians don't know what they're missing. I've been in groups, even since we've been up here, where people have experienced that and have said things like, I've been here 10 years and I haven't had friends or community like this ever. Yeah. Like I've never experienced this. It's like they've been going to church, every Sunday. They've lived in a community, a neighborhood. They're like, I've never experienced this. And when you do experience it, it is life-changing. And so anyone listening to this, I would encourage you to get in community. And honestly, I'd say it's probably the same at both campuses. Community groups is one really good option for that, but it's not the only option, right? There's Bible studies,
serving in ministries,
being on a team. Sometimes it happens outside the programming of the church, where a few people just say, hey, we're going to meet every Saturday for coffee and like study the word together and pray. Like, it's not a one size fits all. The bottom line is you need to be in real gospel-centered relationships with other Christians if you want to grow. Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah. Ben, I like that question. If you have questions, feel free to hit us up. Podcast.
It's like he hasn't even missed a day.
Not missed a beat.
We'll see you next week.